Great. We're thrilled to be here with you today, and we're going to be spending the next 15 minutes talking to you about OnDeck and how we've built a fully integrated, robust platform built on predictive analysis so that we can actually help fuel small business owners, something we feel very, very passionate about. And today's conversation is going to focus on not just that platform, but how we've really extended it into places where we've found that our small business owners are going, specifically mobile. So our small business owners more and more are really not able to sit in front of a desk. They're wearing multiple hats, CEO, CFO, CMO, and they can't stay tied to their desk, and they want to be able to transact wherever and whenever they need. And so for us, our mobile strategy really had to be front and center for our strategy on how we really are relevant to our small business owners. So we'll talk through the platform, and then we'll talk about a little bit about some of the things we learned along the way. How did we build this platform? What did we learn? And what are some best practices that we'd like to share with you? And at the end, like I said, we'll have some Q&A. So feel free to think about those things as we're presenting. So before we begin, I'd like to tell you a story about one of our small business owners. And the way that we do software development at OnDeck is pretty cool. We actually have a lot of customer panels so that we can actually stay very, very close to small business owners. And one of them, the owners of Mr. Pickles, is a husband and wife team. They've been in business for about 5 years, and they needed to have a cash infusion for a project that expanded their channels from being just a market-based company a farm-based company to going into other channels, including grocery stores. And so they needed about 6 months worth of capital quickly. They went to their bank, who they'd had a relationship with for many years, and the bank really wasn't able to serve them and didn't have the ability to really talk to them about what their growth needs were, where they saw their business going. So all of my pickles, they came to us online. They filled out an application in minutes, and within days, they had the funding they needed to make that expansion move in their business. So this is but one example that we have where small business owners really are not able to be served by traditional lenders. And a recent survey actually found that small business owners spend about 33 hours searching for financing, often to only be disappointed with traditional lenders. So this is a space that we feel is growing. It's growing quickly. We know that we have a lot of competition in this space, which we're hugely excited about because competition helps us keep our edge on technology. But one of the things that we're also learning is that it's changing quickly. So it's not just about having an online presence. It's not just about being able to do things quickly, but it's also about being able to be expansionary and extensible. And that's where mobile plays a big role, as does security, but we won't cover that one today. So at a high level, how we do things is really being able to have, like I said, a vertically integrated stack that collects thousands of data points on the front end. And this is everything from government to social to financial data about the small business owner and transaction history about their cash flow, because this is really important. A FICO just doesn't serve well in the small business lending space because it doesn't accurately represent the small business owner's ability to run his business. It's based on consumer lending. And then we take all of that data, we crunch it, we do a lot of other things in parallel, including some risk checks, fraud checks, making sure that we know this customer, the small business owner. And then we have rapid approvals. So our approval process really takes what a bank or traditional lender does in a couple of months, or maybe a month to a couple of months is what we've seen, to being able to provide that decision in real time in less than 10 minutes, or at most a couple of days. And then as fast as same-day funding. So you've all probably been aware that ACH and real-time ACH is actually on the horizon. So we're really excited about this and our opportunity to get our small business owners capital instantaneously. And just to go back to the point about this is the platform that we've built, but the way that we build, and this is super important for us, is that we have to stay super, super close to our small business owner. And what that means is that, can you go back one slide, please?
All right.
What that means is that we need to be able to have conversations with small business owners about what is really relevant to them, how is their business growing, what works in our product, what doesn't work. And like I said, what we increasingly heard was that small business owners are not seated at their desk. They typically run the range from people who have a very small shop and they're doing all of the hands-on work and managing people, to they have a small staff, to they have a larger staff, but they still don't want to sit all of, they don't want to do all of their transactions online. They want to have the capability to use a lot of the mobile features and have instantaneous access and notification. And so mobile was really, really big for us this year. We rolled out Android back in July. We've just released iOS. We feel like it's a big hit. We're going to walk through that demo right now for the Android app. The mobile app strategy really does start with existing customers. So what can existing customers do online today? And what we found is that with the mobile device, we're not only able to provide the features that we can with an online experience, but we're also able to use some of the native applications and native features on an iOS or an Android to help the experience to be even more streamlined, to do things like Touch ID, to do things like enable sending data through pictures. So in this example, we're going to show you a customer who has a line of credit and a term loan. On the line of credit, what was really, really pertinent to this situation is that we have a simple, streamlined perspective and view for the small business owner. So you could see that we kept it super, super clean. They have a graphic that is automated that shows them their line of credit and how much is still available to them. We have the ability for them to draw funds instantaneously. So in that example for All of My Pickles, they could be in a store actually needing to purchase those goods that we talked about and immediately draw down on those funds. And that draw funds feature can't just be plain Jane vanilla. It has to be really, really simple and with the intention that the small business owner that's using this application will need to have the ability to have a couple of choices that are available to them. And some of the other functionality that's included in the mobile that's not necessarily part of an online experience is being able to use your mobile to instantaneously call your account manager, instantaneously call your customer service agent, instantaneously get messages about if your payment is late, if it's coming up, if you have the ability to do a cross-sell. So some of these really areas where we have closer interaction with the merchant helps us to stay relevant, helps us to be very, very close to them and understanding what they need and how they need it. Okay, here we go. Logging in. Okay, this is where they're drawing down. And so what's interesting here is that they of course have several options, but they also have the ability, if they pick 155 or 1,550 or 5,000, that becomes one of their next options that's available to them the next time they draw. So using historical data about what that small business owner has done in the past, and let that be part of the options that are available to them in the future. So also security is a big thing for us. So we want to make sure that this is a large amount of money. We want to make sure that they're very, very clear about what they're doing, what the interest rate is, what the APR is, and being very transparent about all of that to the small business owner. And on the confirm, this actually enables us to say that this is in process and that it could take a certain period of time depending on the bank and the business process. Now going back to making a payment, it's also really important for us to have payments that can be one-time payments or payments for that small business owner when they choose, and not just the recurring payment schedule that they have. So again, having the ability for them to either choose specific options or create a new option that becomes part of the patterns that they will see next time is really important. And again, going through that same process and having this pattern for either draw or review be a pattern that they understand across both drawing down and making a payment. So standardization is super key as well. And then going back to the account overview, another thing that's really important on the interaction space is being able to have the small business owner contact us and use the integrated phone capabilities and email capabilities on the phone. So of course their account manager is not a movie character, but it's actually a picture of their real account manager. But when they press call, this will actually place a call to that specific account manager, or they can email. So of course, if you're online, this would not we would not have that kind of capability. And then going back to settings, another really big thing here for us is the ability for the small business owners to be able to change their password on the fly, and that password to be reflected both on the mobile and on the online experience. So whatever they're doing on the online presence and the mobile experience, we need to make sure that they can have a conversation that isn't broken across those two channels. Going back to how we built this, what's really important, and just diving down into technical features a little bit, what was really important is for us to have an API that can carry the same functionality across online experiences or mobile experiences. And to have the ability for to realize that real-time occurrences will happen. We will have people who lose their phones. We will have people who go through dead spots. We will have to support not only Android and iOS, but potentially Microsoft devices in the future. So we want to have the ability for this to be super scalable, and super scalable not only for a US perspective, but as we start thinking about global, how does this solution actually help us to solve something when we start venturing into global waters? So the merchant API is an API that has many different business functions, and one expansion of that is the mobile API. So it will do things like make sure that we have security. It will do things like make sure that we parse data for the transactions that we see. It will do some specific things that are not business focused, but things that are more applicable to the mobile space. You can see that we hook into Amazon SNS to make sure that we have the ability to have cloud deployments for notifications that span across iOS and mobile, and that we have Mixpanel right in between. So this is super important for us because as we build, we don't want to continue to just have to ask our customers how things are going. We want to make sure that we are measuring every step of the way. Where did they go? How did they behave? Did they go from page to page? Did they get confused? How do we make sure that we understand the pulse of our mobile apps before our customers tell us? And this is not just Mixpanel. We also have crash analytics hooked in. So if any crashes happen, knock on wood, nothing's happened yet, we have the ability to know about it before our customers tell us. And then another big thing is security. So having the ability for the mobile device to have data that is encrypted on the device, God forbid somebody loses their phone and that phone is able to be hacked into, we do not want that private customer information to be in danger in any way. So mobile must-haves. The things that we found that are super imperative for us are to think about security front and center. Like I said, we spent a lot of time on the design. We went through real-life scenarios. What actually happens to a person who's using a mobile device? What are the things we can learn from best practices? And security was front and center, not only in how we build software, so making sure that we have tests that run and look at the software that we build, but also making sure that we have encryption that's built in, both on the mobile site and on our sites. Responsive customer experience. So making sure that we can have small asynchronous calls back and forth so we don't tie up either the presentation mode or customers that have long drag time on any of the functions that they have, whether it's draw payments or, draw funds or make a payment. And then thoughtful versioning is super important. So it's important for us not to force upgrades on our users. We only want to help our customers to upgrade when we have something that's going to be really relevant and useful for them. So versioning on the API and the mobile version is super important. It takes a little bit more time, and you have to make sure that it's scalable, but that's super important in the software development process. And then automate everything. So test, deployment, making sure that your environments, you have the ability to have push-button environments. That was super important for us. So in our mobile software development process, it takes about 2 minutes for us to go from implementing a feature to it going through all the tests on devices, all the security tests, and going out to production. And that doesn't happen by accident. That takes a lot of work. But having environments that can spin up very, very easily is part of that whole automation process. And then things that we actually learned. Of course, at OnDeck, we've grown significantly over the past couple of years, and what we found is that internal pressures actually start outpacing external pressures. And what I mean by that is some of the external pressures we used to have is, are we going to be relevant? Are people going to know our name? That's no longer as paramount as some of the internal pressures. How do we scale? How do we make sure that software development teams understand how we do business? How do we make sure that we have the same repeatable process across all teams? How do we make sure that we bake security in from the get-go? Having self-contained teams was automation is an imperative. We just talked about that. Self-contained teams is a huge part of a win for us. Having a team that could do security, DevOps, product, QA, all of these facets on one team together mean that that team can scale and move pretty quickly and have a winning model. And then have working prototypes and documentation. So it's not enough just to say, okay, this is what I will build. It's really super important for us to have early working prototypes and making sure that we get feedback. And then document our systems and our processes as we grow, as our systems grows. If we don't have documentation, at least a bare minimum of documentation, as we add new people, it becomes more and more confusing. And so that was a big part of our scale. And then finally, empowering teams to succeed and have the ownership. So the mobile team and the mobile venture that we had was a huge success because we have a self-contained team. We enabled them. We had specific guidelines, but that team was actually very, very much in charge of helping this come to life without a lot of oversight and governance. So I'm going to pause there and just ask what questions we have.
Okay, so you guys did a great job of submitting questions. Thank you. We only have a couple minutes left, but one major question that I got was plans for global expansion. So if you want to address that in the couple minutes we have remaining.
Yeah, so OnDeck has actually already expanded. We're in Canada, and we're looking at other countries as well. What's super important for us is that the US really has a big mobile presence, but a lot of other countries, the EU in particular, really have a much larger mobile footprint. So whatever we're doing for the US, it's super important for us to look at what those expansion opportunities for us and how we will build out in these new spaces.
Okay, great. And as far as concerning security, what method do you use for encryption?
Alberto?
Yes, we use SQL Cipher, which is a library available for Android, iOS, and which provides security that's on the device itself. So we integrated with that library, which could actually provide like different levels of security. And then that's the question was more specifically to the device itself, or like the.
I think that's good.
That's all right. Yeah. But basically, SQL Cipher is the word. Yep.
Great. And is there an API call that would expose your OnDeck score for a merchant?
There is not at this time.
Okay. Great. Moving on, since we still have 1 minute left. What do you do to ensure customers going through dead spots keep their conversation alive?
Very, very good question.
Yeah, that's a very good one, especially financial apps. If application crashes because you are like in a tunnel or like anything that you lose connectivity, you may lose that customer. So we actually designed and architecture our mobile app to be responsive if we have connectivity or not. Imagine that you make a payment and you lose the connectivity. You don't want to actually the customer to make undesired payment, I guess. So it all depends how you architect. That's one of the reasons that we invested in a native platform, and where you can leverage in our architecture that can help with like offline user experience. And as soon as they connect, they resume where they left off. So it's just like architecture decisions and how we do this. It depends and varies between iOS and Android. I would be more than happy to actually go into details if anyone of you want to know the intricacies of each platform, I guess.
So we have a table, so any other technical questions or any other questions generally, we are happy to answer.